So in the previous class, we talked about Freud and Jung and Spielrein, you can see here. And we quickly looked at Totem and Taboo and the writings from that period, including Freud's metapsychological papers that he wrote during World War One. Today, we're going to be focusing on the period immediately following the First World War. At the fifth IPA Congress, Freud took to the podium and delivered an address that roused many members of his audience. He acknowledged that psychoanalysis, as had been practiced until then, was essentially a treatment for the wealthy, and he called for a different future. He imagined a time when society would wake up to the extent of neurotic suffering among ordinary people. When that happened, he said, institutions and clinics would need to be established where treatment would be made available free of charge. The technique, he acknowledged, would probably have to be adapted. Psychoanalysis, in its pure, intensive, classic form, hours and hours of free association, meeting on a daily basis, might not always be practical. The work might require adjustments. Famously, he described the prospect of mixing the quote, pure gold of analysis with the quote, copper of direct suggestion, acknowledging that a more modified, accessible form of treatment may be necessary. It was perhaps not the best metaphor he could have chosen, but its intent was unmistakable. Freud publicly endorsed the idea that psychoanalysis had an obligation to reach beyond the consulting rooms of the bourgeoisie and gave his blessing to those who would endeavor to make that happen. The Berlin Polyclinic, founded by Max Eitingon, Karl and Ernst Simmel in 1920, was a wonderful experiment. It offered free psychoanalytic treatment to patients who couldn't pay, operating as an outpatient clinic with a sliding scale that could go all the way down to nothing at all. In its first decade of operation, thousands of patients were treated at the clinic, figures that utterly dwarfed anything that had been managed in private practice before. A much fuller range of diagnoses were treated, from anxiety, depression, hysteria, and obsessional neurosis to character disorders, psychosis, war trauma, and many other symptom presentations. What made the Berlin Clinic especially important beyond its direct work with patients was the way it simultaneously became the central training institution for a new generation of psychoanalysts. Eitingon, thinking carefully about the quality and consistency of psychoanalytic practice, developed the now familiar training triad that still forms the backbone of psychoanalytic education today. And we'll talk about this more, but the thing with institutes, if you go to a psychoanalytic institute, they give you these three things provided all at the institute. But you can absolutely study psychoanalysis independently, and I would advise have these three things in place, but you can choose your own analyst instead of an analyst provided to you from the institute, because often when you're at an institute, pretty much always, you have to go with one of their analysts. Even if you're already in analysis and have your own analyst, they'll make you switch to one of theirs, which is strange. And then they provide the lectures and the didactics, and then you get supervised by one of their analysts. But you can absolutely choose your own analyst, choose your own supervisor, and do your own study like we're doing here, and still become a psychoanalyst. So I just wanted to say that, and we'll definitely talk more about that. That's one of the whole reasons that we're here. So the now familiar training triad. First, one must undergo one's own personal analysis. Second, one must be supervised by an analyst as you undertake clinical work. And third, one must educate oneself by attending didactics on the theory and practice of psychoanalysis. Analysts in training, also known as candidates, or from a Lacanian lens, analysts in formation. And Lacan would say that a psychoanalyst is always ever in formation. So you don't stop studying psychoanalysis when you're a psychoanalyst. You're always learning new things. Analysts in training at the Polyclinic were expected to conduct analyses of clinical patients under the supervision of senior colleagues. This meant that the clinic was not just providing free treatment, it was also producing analysts who would go on to carry the work forward. This was the foundation on which the whole edifice of psychoanalytic training was built. The people receiving free treatment were inevitably the training cases of less experienced analysts in formation, which is still the bedrock of how training institutions function today. Whether this is problematic or simply practical is a question that people argued then and people continue to argue to this day. The same type of system is in place in teaching hospitals and training clinics where psychologists like myself, as well as medical doctors, social workers, and other clinicians receive much of our training. To understand why Freud's free clinics, as they come to be known since the publication of Elizabeth Danto's book in 2005, felt so urgent and necessary at the time, we have to understand the atmosphere of the moment. Vienna and Berlin in the Weimar years were cities crackling with political energy and social experiment. The old certainties had been blown apart by World War I. Socialism was not a fringe position, but was a serious mainstream intellectual commitment for many Europeans. The Russian Revolution had just happened. People genuinely believed that society could be reorganized from the ground up, that human suffering was not inevitable, but structural and systematic. Sounds familiar? And that science, including the new science of psychoanalysis, may have a role to play in the transformation of society. We'll be talking about this on May 1st. Many of the analysts who were most passionate about the free clinics were also, in various ways, committed to left wing politics. They saw neurosis not as an individual misfortune, but as a social problem with social causes. If capitalism and its discontents, including alienation, repression, and economic anxiety, to name a few, were making people sick, then treating individuals was at best a partial answer. But it was something, and the free clinics represented a way of bringing psychological help to people whose suffering had a social dimension that classic private practice could never address.